In the decade following the 1918 influenza pandemic, very little was written about this virus and this pandemic that killed over 50 million people worldwide. Well, I like plenty was written in newspapers, but like novels, fictional accounts that either dealt with the flu or took place during the pandemic and the process of how we dealt with it, there was very little. More Americans died of the Spanish flu, as it was called, than Americans died in World War One, World War Two, the Korean War, and the Vietnam conflict combined. Yet, fiction writers didn't set their stories in quarantine, in field hospitals, in Potter's fields. They didn't write tales of people wearing masks or social distancing. There are a few fictionalized accounts of naysayers and protesters and rioters because of the pandemic. Few descriptions of the fear and pain caused not only by the illness and death, but also by the slow, subtle horror of losing over a year of your life to isolation. Yet books set in the trenches of Europe abounded in the 1920s. War is trauma, and we tell those stories of families killed and displaced, of soldiers wounded physically and mentally. Fiction is such an important part of spiritual recovery, of psychological healing. Novels, shows, plays, and movies help us look at our pain in a safe and controlled way. We can see the horrors of war and try to heal ourselves from that. But for some reason, not pandemics. Why do we not write about pandemics until we're safely far, far away from them? And even then, we write about fictional pandemics like Steven Soderbergh's 2011 thriller Contagion, which was 9 years before COVID-19 and 90 years after the Spanish flu. Since 2020, very few shows or movies depict mask wearing or lockdowns. Just like the 1920s, the trauma of the pandemic seems too hard to fictionalize. Is this because the horrors we experience during those pandemics are, unlike war, too boring and abstract to make into horror fiction? This makes some sense because the pain we experienced, or at least from my point of view, during the 2020 sitting at home with our thoughts and our fears, the fact that our relationships all changed, some marriages fell apart, babies boomed, and people died or were permanently disabled by the virus. All the while, loved ones couldn't even come see them. Maybe it feels wrong to exploit those very personal traumas for fiction stories. Or maybe it feels, as a writer, difficult to know how to even write that in an engaging way. Ultimately, I think it's maybe just the feeling of too soon resonating with us when it comes to pandemics. Yet wars are tangible and direct, and they happen to a few people somewhere else, not to everyone everywhere at the same time. Contagion was a tough watch for me, not because it's bad or even that scary, or even that it closely matches how COVID went down, but it was near enough to remind me of the anger, the loneliness, the dread, and the uncertainty I felt, we all felt over the last 5 years. Oh, hi, Cecil.
Oh, hi, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What is your favorite movie, novel, play, etc., just about war or takes place during war?
Oh, goodness, that's a tough one. I guess it's like a I mean, I would have to say a painting. I mean, Guernica
Oh, yeah.
is like I think getting to see that like for the first time, you're like, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my.
Uh-huh.
Like I think getting to see that painting in person. Because, my mom would she doesn't have a degree in art, but she would sort of volunteer to come into my public elementary school, and she would do like once a month thing where she would just talk about a famous painting. So she was, relatively schooled in art history,
Mm-hmm.
enough to talk to a bunch of, I don't know, third graders or whatever, fifth graders. And so I grew up with an understanding of and an appreciation of art history. But then when I think I actually got to see that painting in person and see the scale of it, it
Yeah.
was it was pretty breathtaking.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good one. I hadn't even thought about paintings and the way that we depict that, and especially with Picasso taking on that subject matter too.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's funny when you asked me that question, I think the first couple of answers, it was that. And then there's I think there's a Goya painting as well. That was like the second thing that popped in my head. So maybe there's something in war that triggers a very visual response in my brain rather than a literary or a storied response.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. I think about this constantly, which is the, a horror novel or a horror, like a truly genred horror thing, right?
Hmm.
Like so much
Yeah.
like this movie, Contagion, is thriller, not it's not really a horror movie, but
It's a procedural.
yeah, but it we cover a lot of movies like this on the show,
But I
which
mean,
are
like
horror peripheral.
this movie could be World War Z if World War
Yeah.
Z was a good movie, minus the chompy zombies, you
Yeah,
know?
totally. So there is these horror elements, but when you get really genred horror and you have this like abstract villain,
Yeah,
something that's supernatural and not quite real, whether it's a demon or just like the relentless man like Jason or Freddy.
sure.
The I always feel like those movies are dealing with some type of like n not specified feeling from the writer, the creator, whether or not it's just something in dreams, whether or not it's
Hmm.
like a
Hmm.
deep-seated fear, and the horror kind of like brings that out. It shows us what the author is kind of going through, maybe. And maybe that's it. When you abstract it, it's a little bit easier. But I do think writers have a hard time directly talking about their own pain and struggles. And war somehow seems easier for writers who only secondhand know about the horrors of war from journalists. Um,
Sure.
Whereas pandemic, we all went through it. Like
Yeah.
you don't get
Yeah.
to turn to your neighbor and be like, oh, here's the thing you didn't experience that I
Right.
experienced that was bad today. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's a set answer. I'm just really curious about it. And Contagion really like, oh, it kicked up a lot of dust for
Didn't
me.
it? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
same, same. Well, what's your answer? What's your favorite war
I,
story,
I tend
film,
to
book,
such a good question. I wrote that
image?
question for you and I didn't have one readily available. I think maybe I don't think I have like a go-to war novel or book or what have you. I think probably, although it's been a while, would be The Cane Mutiny
Oh,
by Herman
I've never
Wouk.
read that.
I love it. I really loved it when I read it, and it is half bad captain in wartime
Yeah.
and half court martial. So it's
Okay.
got this like
The
it
courtroom drama
courtroom
kind of. Yeah,
drama
yeah, yeah.
sort of thing, and it really focuses more in on like what is hierarchy? What does
Yeah.
mutiny mean? Like what
Yeah.
is why do we have the structure? When do we cross lines to save ourselves? I mean, this movie actually deals with that of like, I'm gonna just test this vaccine on my own
I know,
leg.
right? Yeah, I gasped. I was like, "Oh, she's going for it. She's
Oh,
going for it. Oh, damn."
so yeah,
Have you ever seen Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory?
I have not.
Jeffrey, based on what you just said, you like this week you should watch Paths of
Okay, all
Glory.
right.
I mean, it's an amazing film, but it deals with a lot of exactly what have you just said.
Okay, okay, fascinating. Yeah, I think, and I would say also the movie The Pianist with
Oh
Adrian
yeah.
Brody,
Yeah,
because that is like on the ground a look at just
yeah,
war is just a group of men shooting at each other.
yeah,
It's not this abstract strategical thing of moving armies and giant
yeah,
invasion of Normandy battles. It is like people in the streets seeing somebody go into a building and then they are hunting that motherfucker
yeah.
down.
It's like it's down to the granular level of
Yes, yes.
me versus you, or like, and this is my name, and that person's name is that.
Yeah,
Like that really, you can see their face.
yeah. Well, let's talk about the MEV1 virus
Gonna get that
of,
pig bat disease,
yeah. A lot was that, man, this movie's I watching this movie, I'm like, I've never seen this film, but I feel like I already had seen it through
right?
everyone talking about it in 2020.
Yeah, I had never seen this either, and I knew it existed, and I feel like it was mentioned in so many kind of clip shows and things like that, that I did feel like I kind of knew it. And then watching it, I was like, honestly, it's just like watching a bunch of celebrities
Uh-huh.
just do the shit that we all did for a couple of years.
Did any part of this movie like get to you, like trigger any emotions, like your personal like
Oh, sure.
pandemic time
It,
emotions? Like,
it really did. I mean, I think this movie is so effective because, and I was thinking about like a lot about Steven Soderbergh's style of filmmaking, which is kind of less is more,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. Like he's not a flashy filmmaker. Like
Mm-mm.
he's like cast good actors, give them kind of something interesting to do, get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of like, so he's not trying to like do too much with the directing style. And I think because of that, it allowed me and then a lot of these sort of very small, micro, very small memories of 2020, 2019, 2020, 2021 kind of came up. Just like little flashes like driving past Central Park or, walking past Central Park when there were literally tents of bodies.
Yeah.
Um, like later on traveling and meeting somebody who introduced themselves as a never masker,
Yeah.
literally introduced themselves as a never masker, and then a few days later complaining that because they refused to get the vaccine, they were like, why can't I re-enter the country that I
Mm-hmm.
just left? Because
Mm-hmm.
the United States had mandated that you need to have a vaccine if you're going to travel to a different country. You need to get that vaccine.
Yeah.
Um, just things like that, like those little small things that, I mean, enough time has passed that I had forgotten a lot of those little small moments.
For me, I realized like I think the number one emotion anytime I spiked with an emotion during the pandemic, it has always been anger. And I'm just now trying to
Yeah.
like learn to release that anger. But like anger at people who wouldn't wear a mask
Yeah.
in spaces,
Yeah.
or anger at people that would even anger at people who'd wear the wrong mask or wear the mask poorly.
Yeah.
The dick nose thing, if you remember
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
And yeah, and watching this movie, like anytime Jude Law is on the screen,
Oh
like
my
it
God.
fueled the fire in
Australian
my
Joe
belly.
Rogan.
Yeah, yeah. And it really, really steamed me. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh man, I'm still dealing with
Yeah.
anger over this. Well, we're gonna open with day two
It's
is
like
the structure of this
all we
movie.
hear is just a wet cough.
Ugh. And it is Beth, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, who is at an airport. She's at an airport in Chicago. She's got a phone call from John Neal, who we can see clearly she is wearing a wedding ring, but she
Hmm.
is talking to a man during a long layover in Chicago. She had just left his house where they had had a little doing it.
Like, I love it. He's like, hey, this is the dude you just had sex with. How's it going?
Uh-huh.
Like, again, like kind of what I'm talking about style, just like that, like no nonsense, cut the fat. You know what their relationship is, extramarital affair, bit bop bip, we're in it.
Yep.
But also kind of no judgments about these people. Like they're not like we're not feeling any kind of a way about it. It's just it is what it is.
Yeah. I'm so curious, like, the feelings in 2011 of watching this movie. I have a feeling it's pretty clear to people, but the way he's done this scene, as she's like, you know, getting ready to go get her flight
Mhm.
back home to Minneapolis, she's coughing, but then we see a close up of the bar peanuts she's been
Oh my
touching,
God,
the
right?
credit card she hands to the
Yep.
bartender, who then
Yep.
swipes it. And It's this movie really fixates on how much we touch things.
Yeah. Like later, it's the Japanese guy on the bus who like coughs into his hand and then touches the bus. Or no, I think maybe I'm conflating two different scenes, but like
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
yeah, it's a montage of all of these people. There's a kid in Hong Kong who gets on
yeah,
a elevator, like just he looks so sick and he's
yeah.
coughing on an elevator with kids. And oh, he walks through a wet market.
Oh, I know. There's like food everywhere.
Yeah. Um,
The model who's like in a modeling, going to a casting call at a modeling agency in London with
uh-huh.
like, just doing her normal thing.
Yeah, and then the Tokyo businessman who passes out on the train. Yeah, this movie is fast paced. It jumps a lot. And it's funny because you said, Soderbergh is not a flashy director. And when watching this movie, there's nothing flashy other than the cast in this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
But as a writer, I'm like, this is real fucking flashy in a professional type of way
Yeah.
because the way he moves from scene to scene and manages to, I, I never lost the plot.
Yeah.
Like it moves such a good pace. He's never trying to confuse you,
Hmm.
even though it's told not quite out of like it's
Like we
told
kind of start on day
chronologically,
two
but
and we know we're going to get to, like, I didn't know we're going to get that day one story, the sort of the rosebud moment of like,
yes.
oh, we're finally going to figure out what the thing
Yeah.
was. I didn't know we were leading to that.
I
I'm
was
glad
I
we
was
did though.
same. I was so impressed with this movie as far as screenwriting goes because it's
Yeah.
so intricately and structured in such a it requires such a virtuosity of writing to be
Yeah.
able to get right to the point. Like you said, that phone call, hey, this is the guy you just slept with, you know?
Yeah.
This is the guy you were just in bed with. Like he gets right to the point and yet it still moves. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
clunky.
And
Oh,
I'd say a lot of that is due to the fact that it's international.
mm-hmm.
Like you're in these places, and that has a feeling. Like
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco feels like San Francisco. Like you can't just like be in a building and be like, just put ticker tape at the bottom and go San Francisco or
Mm-hmm.
London or, like Hong Kong feels like Hong Kong. And there's something about that grounds you in these places and makes it feel worldwide.
Yes.
And the other
Yep.
thing is this soundtrack is fucking dope, Jeffrey.
It's pretty good. Well, I'll get to it later, but I have one exception to that
Okay. Okay,
soundtrack.
sure.
Okay, so Beth returns home. She is married to Mitch, played by Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
This is at least his second marriage because and I think hers too, because she has a son, which is Mitch's stepson, and he has a daughter. So they're both remarried to each other. Don't whatever level of importance, but
Yeah.
both Beth and her son are going to get sick.
Yeah.
And Beth is uh Beth is going to look real fucking bad, collapse and convulse.
This is great. This is rough. Because we're like 5 minutes into this movie.
Yeah. And the the way in which the disease works in this movie is that I mean, like any novel virus, it's the body doesn't know what to do with it.
Right.
So until human body can learn how virus work,
Yeah.
it does some rough stuff. But this thing does some crazy shit to people because it completely shuts down like their ability to see
Yeah.
straight.
It sort of cooks your brain.
Yeah, and the ability to operate your body, and she collapses to the floor and is like spitting up just foam and ends up dying in the hospital.
This scene is
Hmm.
this scene is extremely, again, like I think it's the simplicity and it's the rawness of this scene, again, is the writing in which the doctor's like, I'm very sorry. Um, there was complications. Your wife is dead. And he's like, can I go see her?
Can I talk to her?
Can I talk to her?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't even register. And he's like, no, we were literally having a conversation. If you like that disconnect, I think is so human. And for us as an audience, really establishes this is something out of left field.
Yes.
I think we understand illness, sickness as something that is a slow, gradual buildup. We can kind of get our feelings up. We can kind of put things in an emotional space, deal with them,
Mhm.
handle it, bury it.
Yeah.
And this is like shortcuts a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And he is, clearly not dealing well with this because this is so hard. And the doctor's like, I listen, I don't, we don't, the problem is we don't know what it is. And the only thing that we know of that's happening out of Hong Kong, where she came from, is measles and H1N1. And
Yeah.
those are, like things the body can cope with. Um, he says, the medical examiner may want an autopsy since the cause of death is inconclusive. Uh, he in the cab home, he gets a urgent call from his babysitter.
Fuck.
And when he gets home, his son or stepson Clark has collapsed and is dead too.
Already dead.
This is day 4.
Yeah.
Day 2,
Yeah.
she was at the airport flying
Yeah.
home. Day 4, both mom and son are dead. That's how quickly this virus works. Okay, so let's meet. Also, the other thing I was going to say about the amazing writing and structure of this is this movie has so many characters.
Right.
And it we know who they all are. It balances them
Yeah.
so well. So let's meet Dr. Cheever, Larry Fishburne.
Oh yeah. The Fauci of this.
Yes. Yeah, he
That was
works
the thing.
for the
That was the thing
CDC.
that like I think is so interesting. Like this movie had what I called silhouettes of COVID.
Yes.
Like it's like if you cut out a silhouette, it doesn't get the exact perfect features. It just gave you a silhouette of a character
Hmm.
that you can then sort of put the what actually went down. And this was the government employee who had bad news to deliver that you didn't want to hear and was demonized in the press over.
Yeah. It's funny if like this movie came out in 2022, it would feel a little silly because
Yeah.
it would feel like it
It would
feels
feel
like you're
like almost
trying to
mocking. Yeah.
satirize COVID, but you
Yeah.
like blew it up to make it bigger than it was. But you've kind of got it. Just do a movie about COVID, you
Yeah.
know? Um, you're right. Silhouette's such a great word. It is the shape and shadow
Yeah.
of.
And then all the details are kind of filled
Yeah.
in the film.
Yeah. He works closely with Dr. Mears, played by Kate Winslet, and about how to deal with this. So we've got, Cheever is our Fauci type, and I don't know who Mears is equivalent to, but just like one of his best
Yeah.
agents, essentially in this field for the
His job is
CDC.
to like identify, quarantine.
Yeah. One of the big questions, philosophical questions of this movie is who gets help first?
Oh yeah.
Because one of the very first scene when we meet Dr. Cheever, there's the custodian who works at the building who
Played
sees
by
him
John
come.
Hawkes. I get
Ah,
like the amount of
incredible.
fucking like notable actors in this film.
Hmm. He asks Dr. Cheever about like he's like, I think my son has AD, whatever we call it, ADD, ADHD, and he's like, has he been diagnosed? He's like, no. He's like, is that like, could you do that? And he's like, I'm not that type of doctor, but I'll find a
Yeah.
reference for a referral for you. And you can kind of see on this guy's face, this janitor's face, that like you see the distance between different
Mhm. Yeah.
castes of
Yeah.
people. So that's what's happening with them. We also have in San Francisco, our two major players in San Francisco are Elliot Gould, who plays Dr. Sussman, who works at a
Yes.
like security level, let's just call it, they have a terminology, but it's like a security level 3 lab
Yeah.
where they are collecting um, virus samples to study.
But they don't work for the government. This is
No,
like
they are
a seems
private
like a private.
contractor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to meet Alan, played by Jude Law.
The silhouette of Joe Rogan.
Uh-huh. Yeah, of like an amalgam of all of these types of your, loudmouths on the internet, the Aaron Rodgerses of the world. Like I did my own research that he's selling.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. The silhouette of ivermectin is right
I
here.
know. I know, right?
Of forsythia is the cure.
Yeah.
Woof.
And I just happen to be selling stock in Forsythia.
Yep. Yeah. Uh, Alan is already, the moment we meet him, he is showing a video of this man, this Japanese businessman passing out and dying on the train. He's telling this newspaper editor, he's trying to sell the story about like, hey, listen, there's a cover up. I think this was, some people online are saying this was just a weird staged art project that this man did. It's some kind of performance art piece. And but then also other people are saying like he did die, but the authorities refused to do an autopsy. And I think maybe you got to think about the mercury in the fish. Fish are everywhere. Everyone eats fish, and there's mercury, and the fishing industry is hiding it. And she's like, "You're, I'm not.
Prove it. This
I'll
is not a
ask."
story.
Yeah, she's like, "I'll ask the publisher," and he's like, "Oh, you're stealing my story. I know what you're doing. If this shows up in the Globe, I'll fucking sue you." That's where
So
this man's head is.
lovely. And I like Jude Law is such a great actor. Also, they like did something with his teeth.
Yes.
Like it's just like he just is plays schmarmy so well in
Yeah.
this. Like he's on the attack the whole time.
Yeah. Okay, we're also going to meet Dr. is it Orantes? Who's hold on, I have to
I
pause
know.
for
Like let me
I lost on my notes.
pages and pages of notes.
Okay, hold on just a second here. Just pause for hey YouTube, watch me type things in. Um okay. We're also going to meet Dr. Orantes, played by Marion Cotillard. She's with the World Health Organization. She is an expert in communicable diseases and pandemics research and things like that. So the World Health Organization, they are so the World Health Organization's role in this is to in a pandemic is finding resources for people, but also like doing like deeper academic studies of why this fucking
Yeah.
thing happened. The CDC is an American governmental institution that is trying to understand that within the confines of the United States, but also working globally and also trying to either work internally or hire out through labs, et cetera, to create a vaccine for something and catalog that for future reference. So we have all of these moving parts of governmental agencies across the globe. Plus, you've got whatever China is doing about it as
Right.
well, and whatever Europe is doing about it, et
Also,
cetera,
I
et
gotta say,
cetera.
it was the fact that that's the other thing. The other like the fact that it kind of starts in China and moves is another like just sort of an eerie sort of parallel.
Yeah,
Could have started anywhere.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So she is, you know, she's looking into like they're studying all of the clusters
Yes.
um of people that would have been in and around uh in and around like she was
Yeah.
noting that like the businessman on this bus and this boy who died at
They're
the
like
wet market.
these are the cities.
Yeah.
These are the people who kind of were brought, and we think we've narrowed it down to a patient zero. Very similar to what they did with like HIV and AIDS
Yeah.
back in the day. They're like, we think we've kind of figured it out to this like to this airline steward,
Yeah.
you know. And they're
Yeah.
like, hey, we think it's Gwyneth Paltrow. We don't
Yeah.
know, but we're at least enough that we're going to send Marion Cotillard to China and to like Macau and do some
Yes.
research on that.
Yeah. I was I got a little thrown off because I think there's like I don't forgive me if people out there understand the politics of this better, but separating Hong Kong, China, and Macau,
Yeah.
it's a very
Sticky.
complicated thing. So I apologize
Sticky.
in advance if we don't get all of these right, but I do know that there is a difference there. But the this episode will not cover the political dynamics of Macau, Hong
Yes.
Kong, and China today. But we will talk about her being with the Chinese government
Right.
and kind of like a lower level agent there who is Chinese and is helping her out and is also her translator there working with the government. And of course it plays at a little bit of suspicions of what the Americans are doing or they're reading conspiracy theories too online that are like the Americans supposedly already have a cure and the World Health Organization is in bed with the Americans.
Right.
And the UN and the WHO are hiding this shit from the rest of the world, particularly China.
And they're also saying, hey, it's a rather bold move saying that this originated in our country
Yeah.
because doesn't that label it the China virus?
Uh-huh.
Saw that one play out in real time, didn't
Yeah.
we?
Well, and just in the intro, we called it the Spanish flu
Right?
in 1919 because Spain was one of the only countries reporting on the flu.
Right?
And so what was happening is all of these other countries were like, it's not, we don't have the flu here. And so nobody was writing about it. And Spain had journalists being like, there's a flu happening and it's really violent and we need to do something about it. And everyone's like, oh, the one who smelt it dealt it. Looks like
Yeah.
it's the Spanish flu. So yeah.
Fascinating.
Hmm. Anyhow, let's just go ahead and talk about her art because she's on screen the briefest, but there is a situation here wherein her contact in China, we start learning through his other, the way he's communicating with other people. He has a village that is lots of sick people there. And when she's being taken back to the airport, these people organize to kidnap her, put a blindfold on her, take her to the village, and keep her hostage.
Yeah.
And he's
What?
like,
Yeah.
You will remain here
Until
until
we
we get a vaccine.
like we want to be first on the list. And
Yes.
we're going to leverage you, a World Health Organization Westerner,
Uh-huh.
to be first in line.
Yeah.
And honestly, I knew something was up with this guy because like it's that moment where she's like, oh, you know, how's your mother? And she's like, she's dead. She
Yeah.
died of the like it's that moment of you're asking him to research the thing that killed his mother. I was like, woof,
Yeah.
cold.
Yeah.
That is some hard shit.
Yeah. He
So
also in
then
that yeah, go ahead. I'm
so
sorry.
then when he has this plot of like kidnapping her, I was like, well, you kind of understand
Yeah.
the motivation there. So even in that, so what seems like a quote unquote villain isn't a villain because it's much similar to like Beth Imhoff, Gwyneth Paltrow, what in other movies would be the extramarital affair that leads to the spread of the. It's not. The emotion isn't there in this. It's just it is what it is, and you understand these are just people being people, and they have reasons they're to do what they do.
Yeah. At
Same
the heart of it.
With Lawrence Fishburne and his wife, and that sort of
Mhm.
spread of the you tell a loved one, and your loved
Uh-huh.
one tells a loved one
Yeah.
thing. It's people being people.
Yeah. That we weaponize information
Yeah,
is one theme in this, and another theme is the heart people at their heart people do things for self-serving reasons, and it takes an extra level of understanding to do things for the good of people outside of your innermost circle.
yeah. And I think that's why you're so mad at people, or
Yeah.
me are so mad at people that don't have that basic, or no, don't have that next level empathy, that are like,
Yes.
I protect my own,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to protect anybody outside of my own by doing the most simple, basic things.
Yeah. And that's why I think the kind of like B plot through line that I liked the most, or the character's arc that I liked the most, was Marion Cotillard's arc. I
Mhm.
really love Dr. Orontes' arc. Like where she lands at the end is really interesting
Yeah.
because it does speak to that. There is an extra gear you have to go into, not just to empathize with people, but to truly feel for people who that you really can't even like.
Like
You
she
know what I
gets
mean?
Stockholm syndrome, essentially.
I, yes, I think there is
Like,
something to
sort
that, but I
of.
think it's more complicated than Stockholm syndrome. I think it really is
I mean, I
like,
think she generally I mean, Stockholm syndrome, but like she understands why they're doing what they're doing.
yes,
And she's like, I mean, she may not agree with the political reasons behind it, but by the end, she goes back to that fucking village when she
uh-huh,
finds out they've been given a placebo.
yeah,
You
yeah,
understand she almost becomes a political ally to their cause.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, because she got into her job because it helps people,
Yeah.
and the political aspects of what happens in her storyline, because eventually the Chinese government relents, gives
Like
them a bunch of
we don't
vaccines.
negotiate with kidnapping or with terrorists kind
Yeah,
of
and then
thing.
she finds out later it was all placebos because the Chinese government, like the U.S. government, does
They'd
not deal
rather
with
be strong and wrong, strong and than,
when they don't negotiate with terrorists. Which, from
yeah,
a governmental point of view, I fully understand why you don't do that either.
sure.
Anyhow, really, really enjoyed just her personal character arc because it's not about there's a right answer or a wrong answer to this. It's about
Yeah.
how she personally responded. But let's get back to America, and we've got Dr. Mears is being sent to from Atlanta, CDC. She's being sent to Minneapolis because now we're pinpointing Beth Emhoff as patient zero. And a couple things. One, Matt Damon, his daughter, Jory, is coming to live with him now. She's been living with mom, but she's coming back from Wisconsin to live with Dad Mitch in Minneapolis because he's living alone. She
Yeah.
legitimately feels horrible and wants to be there with him.
But he's
Doc,
also in quarantine because they're starting to study,
uh-huh.
like they're not letting anybody near him. Like talk about parallels. The fact that this is the Thanksgiving movie, Jeffrey.
It is,
It
yeah,
like
yeah,
especially around the sort of like the the Aaron Mears, the Kate Winslet characters, like trying to push through the like sort of the hard nosed, like, listen, this is the reality of what this disease can be, and the sort of the bureaucracy of like it's Thanksgiving weekend.
yeah.
We can't like
It's the
people
biggest
gonna.
shopping weekend of the
It's the
year.
biggest shopping weekend that people like. We can't just give
You can't
people are
close
going to
the
be all
beaches.
mad. Yeah,
Yeah,
we can't close the beaches. Like that struck a chord. I was
yeah,
like, oof, real. And it
yeah.
only makes things worse.
Hmm.
And then it was watching Dr. Mears talk to that sort of, I think, like, I kind of got an impression it's like sort of local Minneapolis politicians trying to get money, trying to get infrastructure out of them. And they're like, you don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. Why are we
Yeah,
going to give you resources? Why are we going to allocate all this money to something that you can't even put a name to yet?
yeah,
That was
yeah.
another thing that was like, oof.
Yeah, it's makes me
Why
think
should we
of
trust the scientists when
yeah.
you don't even know what the fuck you're talking about? Oh, because you really have to actually know what you're talking about before you know what you're talking about. Boring.
It's like the opening to Fire Walk with Me when he's like, there will be trouble with the local authorities.
Yeah.
And that's totally what they run into here. Dr. Mears has to this is where she explains fomites and the fact that this is
Every time you
communicable
you
through
touch
touch.
your face,
Yeah.
every 3 to 5. That was another thing that like kind of reading up on this film post COVID, things that were accurate
Uh-huh.
that just were like part of the script that to us in this day and
Uh-huh.
age, we're like boop, 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 sensors going off, like
Yeah, yeah.
particle, like social distancing. I think they say social distancing once, and we're like, Jesus Christ, the amount of times we've
Uh-huh.
heard social distancing,
Well, and
which
we still
I always thought was a misnomer. Social distancing. I always thought it should be spatial distancing.
yeah.
I always thought the idea of social distancing actually put us on the back foot
Yeah.
because social distancing has a thing of like, don't communicate with people,
Yeah.
like, stop, like, isolate yourself, as in emotionally,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
socially, as opposed to spatially distancing, because you can have conversations with people, just not with your face all up in their face.
Yeah.
And I think there's like small social things like that were a little bit on the back foot.
Mears is also explaining the R number, which talks about like the
Or not.
R naught, but it sort of talks about the rate at which like an infected person, generally how many people they will infect. So
It's like how soon the disease manifests itself in a patient and how fast that disease is given to a second patient.
yeah, so like basically the rough explanation in this movie is that the R number for just basic flu is one. Like a person with the flu is likely to infect one other person. The person with what was it like polio is like R number three, meaning
Yeah,
a person with
polio. They were like,
yeah
will
before they
infect
had the
3 to 4
vaccine.
other people.
Yeah, and like smallpox was like five or something like that, meaning that
Yeah.
like the shit spreads hard and fast. If nothing is done to curb it. So that's what she's trying to do. She's also the other thing she's going to do there is set up a field hospital in a hockey arena. She's like, this will be perfect. I need three more of these, Dave.
Yeah.
Like,
Which she has to like pry out of the government's, like local government's hands, state
yeah.
government's hands.
She's also going to be interviewing Mitch because we've narrowed down this patient zero thing. And through what they know about Beth's movements in the last days of her life, that this is where Mitch it gets revealed to him that
I
she
know.
took a long layover in Chicago, and he
Why might
knows
she do that?
her ex, John Neal, used to live in Chicago,
And there's a cluster of an outbreak in Chicago.
and John Neal, we have seen already, has been taken in a ambulance to
Yeah.
the hospital and is probably dead from his illness. And yeah, so now he's learning
It's like
your
not only
wife
is
was
your,
fucking her ex,
yeah,
and that's part of the spreading of this sort of thing.
I want to talk about like the sort of the casting of Gwyneth Paltrow as patient zero and having her
Please.
die in like the first 10 minutes of the movie. It felt very much, it reminded me of the movie Psycho, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. To cast, I mean, this movie has so many famous people, but to have someone so recognizable die so early on, someone that you think might be the, like your Janet Leigh, that you're
Yeah.
like, oh, we're gonna follow this. Oh no, she is dead. Which means that any number of these, no matter how Oscar winner Gwyneth Paltrow, if she can die, any of these motherfuckers can die from this. And I think there's that sense of like, and later we do like, I mean, it becomes like when Kate Winslet gets sick, it's like nobody's safe.
Yeah.
So that sort of hangs over that sort of specter over all of these people
Yeah.
and these characters. So
Yeah.
celebrity ain't gonna save you.
She, excuse me, gonna burp a little bit. Matt Damon, Mitch, is also going to learn that he is immune. His body
Yeah.
is immune to this disease. He's just naturally immune. And he's trying to sort of justify it a little bit, being like, well, that means my daughter's immune too. And she's like,
Not necessarily.
well, 50-50 because
Yeah.
who knows? She has a mother too.
Yeah.
So no telling whether or not she is or she isn't. So when he gets back home, he's going to be keeping his daughter on very protective daddy lockdown.
Yeah.
Again, also good idea, but it's all in the execution, right? It's
Yeah.
all in like how we lock down. And lockdown is hard, really hard. And you
Yeah.
start justifying why you don't have to
Yeah.
obey by quarantine rules.
Yeah. And these structures only exist, they're only as strong as the weakest links in society.
Uh-huh.
So when the chains start breaking down, like there was a lot of shit, like later when they're handing out MREs, and I was like, social distancing. Like the
Yeah.
fact that there's a bunch of people standing in a fucking line, I was like,
Yeah.
well, that's not right.
I will
That
say
ain't true.
one of the things I think this movie exaggerates a lot. Like the
Sure. I
it
mean, it has to kind of accelerate. It's much accelerated
yeah.
than what we experienced in COVID for sure.
And so like I say exaggerates, but I'm comparing it out of order in timeline, right? Like chronologically, like it's not exaggerating anything. It's just telling a movie about a fictional
Yeah.
pandemic that is what it is. But one of the things that I think it gets wrong, having just gone through COVID-19 pandemic, is the way in which lots of people out in the world not wearing masks.
Mhm.
However, the uh all of the health professionals constantly not wearing
I
masks
know.
because you can't be covering up these very expensive movie stars' beautiful
That's
faces.
exactly it.
Yeah.
Which again goes back to this idea of you can tell somebody to do something, but at the end of the day, people are going to be people
Yeah.
and people don't like things.
Yeah.
You can tell them it is the healthiest food in the world, but if they don't have a taste for it, they might not want to eat it. So
No.
you can tell somebody this is the healthiest, this is the safest, most safe way that we've figured out to do it. But they're like, but it itches. I can't breathe.
Yeah.
I can't tell who's who. Prove it.
Yeah.
All the things that we had fucking that all the Jude Laws of the world out there were like firing off tweets left, right, and center.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like if you don't like eggplant,
Yeah.
you don't ever have to eat eggplant.
Yeah.
And people will be like, "Oh man, you're missing out." But
Yeah.
it doesn't affect anyone else.
But now
Now,
imagine.
if you don't like if you only ever want to eat chicken fingers and pizza, that starts slightly affecting other people because it's like,
Yeah.
well, if I go out with you, I have to go to a place that only has this. Oh, yeah.
Well,
You
then you'd have,
oh, you want to drink even though drinking is bad for you, but you enjoy it. But also at a certain point, if you drink too much, it affects other like at a certain point,
yeah.
when does your
Yeah.
behavior all the way from I don't like eggplant, so I just won't participate in eggplant eating, all the way to masks make me uncomfortable. I'm going to endanger people by
Yeah.
walking around naked faced in public. I don't know. It's just that's what we all went through in the pandemic, and I think it deals a little bit with that here, but it did not foresee the politics of mask wearing.
And I think I was trying to pinpoint that after watching this movie, and I think it's the shortness of the window
Yes.
between this disease and COVID. Like this
Yes.
is like a 2 day. Like
Yeah.
and I was like, this movie kind of gets into the pinpoint the disease. What is the disease? Can we replicate the disease? Can we make a vaccine? That's the arc of this film.
Uh-huh.
Versus in COVID, it was much more of like, what is COVID? Can we replicate it? Can we test for it? Can we vaccinate for it?
Yes.
And we know the vaccination was like the end goal for most of us,
Mm-hmm.
but the testing was the like movable point that became such a big deal in the meantime that this movie kind of takes that out because honestly, you don't have to test for it because you only got 48 hours to
Yeah,
live.
yeah,
So it
totally.
kind of took that out. So a lot of that stuff of the like having to get the test, who has the test, can you afford the test? Do you have health care to get the test? That stuff that I think became a lot of the political that was very much politicized
Uh-huh.
was kind of removed because of the truncated story that they're telling here.
Yeah. And I think also this the structure of this movie and all of these characters, there is constant good and bad in everyone and differing levels of those things, right?
Sure.
Like the bad that we see in Dr. Cheever is nowhere close to the level of bad that we see in Alan, the conspiracy guy.
Yeah.
However, this movie there's it really does get down to like how do you live your life? Like are we
Yeah.
hoping for a true horror movie like end to the villain?
Yeah.
No, we won't get that. You won't
No.
get that. I was about to say we're about to meet Homeland Security coming to see Dr.
Right.
Cheever and the CDC. And the setup here is a classic archetype of like the feds
Yep.
coming to use their muscle, which they are. The feds thinking
Do you think
this
this
has
is a
been
weapon?
weaponized by the Chinese, crazy. But also, these are the feds doing their jobs.
That's what
That's
they're
what the
paid to do. They're
Homeland
paid
Security
to
is
be the
supposed
most
to do.
paranoid person in the room
Yep.
to just consider the possibility. And honestly, the fact that they listened to Dr. Cheever when Dr. Cheever's like, do you think I love this fucking line where they're like, do you think they might have weaponized the bird flu? And he's like, the birds have already weaponized the bird flu.
Yeah, yeah,
Fucking great line because it's like, but they're not that their job is just to ask the question
yeah,
to be prepared in case it is
yeah.
that.
And this is this Homeland Security task force is led by Bryan Cranston, who
Yep.
plays Admiral Lyle and Admiral Lyle Haggerty, and he's sort of like your milk toast stand up military
Yeah.
government guy. Like he's fine. Like he's trusted. There's not nothing really complicated. He feels like really avuncular. Like
Yeah. Like
good
he's
thing we
doing his
have a cool
job, but
guy.
he's
Yeah.
not like out for, he's not out for blood. He's
No.
just trying to cover all the bases.
Yeah. Okay. We're dealing with like a 20% mortality rate on this fucking virus
Right.
at this point. And so Cheever tells his lab tech, his main lab tech, Allie. Also, her cohort. Did you clock who plays her cohort?
He's like a comedian, right?
Yeah, it's
Dimitri, what's his nut? Yeah.
Dimitri Martin, the comedian, which is really shocking to see him.
I never really got into his stand up. I know, like, he has a recognizable face, so I like
Yeah,
recognized him, but I don't know his work terribly well.
he's funny. He's clever. A lot of the stuff I've seen him do anyway, it's a lot of drawing of things. So he plays. It's not quite prop comedy, but he
I was
does
gonna say prop
drawings and
comedy. Oh, okay.
so he does drawings. And he like it's
Oh,
very
that's kind of cool.
clever. Yeah, it's really interesting. Anyways, Cheever tells Allie, "Hey, this thing is so deadly. We cannot be having Dr. Sussman at
Yeah.
a level 3 lab at UCSF doing anything with this. Tell him shut it down,
Yeah.
cook the samples. We're
Government eyes
done.
only.
Level 4s only." And she's like, "But that's going to take forever if only
Yeah.
level 4s can look at it." He's
And
like,
also, like, he's the best in the world. Like, if he
"Yeah,
can't figure this shit out, nobody, like, it's gonna
yeah,
take us for fucking ever.
yeah." But to his point, it's like, but I don't want
Yeah.
some other level 3, somebody else like walking out with virus on their shirt because they didn't
Yeah.
do it under government control. Okay, we're only at day 12 right
I
now,
know, right?
and Dr. Sussman is out at a restaurant, and it is just a montage of people wet coughing,
Oh,
kissing their kids, breathing on each other,
licking their hands,
licking their hands,
oh
touching
God, touching
countertops.
doorknobs.
Yeah. And he goes back to his lab, tells his assistant, "Hey, go home. I'll take care of burning the sample." She's like, "I can do that. That you shouldn't have to do that. That's like a tech assistant
Oh
job."
my God, Jeffrey, this scene, because of Dr. Cheever's reaction to this was like the horror movie scene for me. This
Uh-huh.
movie had me cringe so hard because I was like, I thought this was going to be the scene at which it was like, oh my God, this is not going to end well.
Mm-mm.
Like the horror movie lover in me is like, oh fuck, he's going to like fuck this up.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to explode. It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
But no, it's the boring answer. And he discovers actually does the job.
Yeah, because so what he was wanting to do is grow the virus in a
Yeah.
lab. Which is funny because he gets confronted by Alan at one point in time saying like
Yeah.
you're trying to create the virus. You're creating biotech
Yeah.
weapons.
He's like, you're making it
Yeah.
to kind of like backpedal. And he's like, dude, you don't even fucking know.
I like his thing. He was like, "You're neither a doctor nor a writer." And he's like, "I am a writer." He's like, "You're a blogger."
Yeah.
It's yeah. But yeah, the whole point in growing the virus is if you can grow the virus, you can then test the virus, and
Yeah.
then you can create a vaccine using the
Yes.
virus.
Yeah.
That's the point.
And then the difference, like, and they find in this fictional world is
Mhm.
the problem is that, like, if you use a dead version of the virus, like from dead cells, it just kills a motherfucker.
Yeah.
So that won't work. So
Yeah.
you have to have live samples,
Yes.
which is unfortunate.
So Alan is busy talking to this hedge fund guy
Oh my God.
in a park, very like deep throat informant sort of thing.
Yep.
But it's what we realize Alan is up to is he uses his blog essentially to promote things for financial gain. And so that he has a hedge fund guy who also is paying him for tips on what he is going to be promoting,
Right.
which is insider trading or fixing securities fraud, something along those lines, where you're
Yeah.
fixing the market. It's
Yeah.
collusion of some sort because it's going to a high profile media person, even if he is just a vlogger,
Yeah.
but it's going to a high profile media person being like, what are you going to be talking about and what can I be investing in?
And I do love how like over the course, like this Alan character, he's very like he like every time you see him, he always drops the number of his viewers
Hmm.
and it increases over the course of the film,
Yeah.
which I think is a really smart one. It tells us a lot about the character, but it
Uh,
also tells us a lot about the world in which we're populated in which people are drawn to this silhouette of a character that's like, don't trust the government. The truth is out there. Seek the truth. These prophets are online and more, and they collect people like magnets, like little iron fillings.
yeah. Yeah. So that's what's happening. And he starts telling this guy about Forsythia. And he was like,
Forsythia
it's,
did do nothing to you. It's just a plant, yo.
mm-hmm. He's
It's a
like,
very
I will
nice plant.
be, and he informs this investor. I'll be talking about it extensively on my blog this week. Okay. So we've got all sorts of shit up and running, but we've got back home with Mitch and Jory. All this shit's happening in the world, but Mitch is like keeping his daughter Jory in the house. Like her boyfriend Andrew comes
Oh
over
yeah,
and he's just
like
trying
he
to like bring flowers for
like
condolences.
condolent, yeah, like condolences. Oh, the fact that the mortuary won't bury the wife and son.
Yep.
They're like, you got to take him somewhere else, have him
Yeah.
cremated. The mother, like Mitch's
Beth's
mom is
mother.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, or is it Beth's mother?
I think it's
I
Beth's
can't tell if it's
mother.
the mother-in-law or mother, but
Yeah.
like
Either way.
the mom is like, I wanted to have my, like she wanted to be buried in the family plot. I guess it is, her mom,
Yeah.
like buried in. So like again, it's the feelings, it's these things that like, how do you tell a grieving mother that had her heart set on the family plot that she now has to cremate her daughter
Yeah.
because of the we don't know what this fucking virus is or how it, you know,
Yeah.
that's a hard conversation.
I did have a few moments in this movie where I found myself getting annoyed with the characters because I was like, oh, tough shit.
I know,
Guess what
right?
we had to deal with? Like
Yeah,
this daughter being like,
that's
I'm gonna lose my whole spring and summer just because of the thing. I'm like, oh, you're only 6 months you're gonna
yeah.
lose to quarantine?
Oh, or when Matt Damon is like things will get back, like trying to like make a prom for his daughter. I was like, yeah. Now imagine trying to, I don't know, hold down a job and also try to teach and
Uh-huh.
keep schooling going and also make a prom. How
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah.
Schools are still open. You're probably still working too, as well.
Uh-huh.
Because that was the thing that this did not address is the clinging to normality that I think the technology, the sort of the Zoom listen, there was no sourdough starters and there was no TikTok dances, I have to say, in this film.
Yeah. They missed. Movie is incorrect. It
Incorrect.
falls apart
But it
completely.
really, it really was. This movie focused so much on the naturally, kind of to the point of your intro, it focused on the abnormality. But I think what we went through so much was the like, no, we got to do something about schools and
Uh-huh.
work.
Yeah.
Essential workers, just
Uh-huh.
keep those groceries coming in. It
It's
does touch on it, but we never like get in the trenches.
no. And I feel so bad because it's so unfair to this movie that was made before
Yeah,
COVID-19. But we went through something that this is a silhouette of what we
yeah.
went through 9 years after this movie came out. And so not the movie's fault, but I
No,
just found
I
myself
mean this
getting
movie is quite prescient, I would
quite
say.
prescient. Yes. Okay. Dr. Orontis, before she hasn't quite been kidnapped yet, but back in Hong Kong, she's gone through like DVD of after DVD from security footage from this Macau casino that has
Yeah.
all this footage of like HD footage. It's very high quality
Oh yeah.
footage of Beth in this casino in Macau, and she's touching everything. She's touching everybody. She's like blowing on the dice at the
What do
craps
you
table,
think that
whatever.
hey Jeffrey, what do you think that cocktail is she's drinking? Because that looked pretty good.
Um, my guess it looks
Looks
well,
like
it
a
looks
Mai
like a
Tai.
porn star. It looks like a porn star martini. It's got that
Ooh, I love a
nice
porn
color
star
of pink. Yeah.
martini.
Um,
Because I was like, ooh, those look delicious,
yeah.
but not enough to get the pig bat
Yeah.
virus over.
Yeah, no, I don't want the big bat virus. And so they also spot at one point in time there's a woman at the bar who is the Ukrainian model who died
Yeah.
in London who's like, "Hey, you forgot your phone," and hands it to
No.
her. There's the boy who died at the wet market who is also a server picking up glasses there. So there's the Japanese businessman that she like blows on his little thing
Yeah.
for luck. And yes, all these sorts of things. There's a shot where she meets the chef at the
Oh
restaurant.
my God, that was the fucking worst where she shakes his hand. I was like, oh, and we have a winner. I
Uh-huh.
think we know. Because anybody, like, if you've ever traveled to a country where like, where you have to get inoculated, as I have, and
Uh-huh.
they're like, are you going to be handling some livestock? And
Uh-huh.
it kind of like when you I get asked those questions, even if you're not, it kind of triggers something in your brain. Like, wait, am I?
Yeah.
Am I going to be wrestling around with cows? And no, probably. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Do I? But you never fucking know.
And that's why they asked that question. It
Yeah.
seems crazy to be like, livestock, who cares? Yeah, I mean,
But
I stayed at a farm, but I wasn't farming. You're like, well,
uh,
did you pet the pigs?
yeah. I mean, did you go into the kitchen?
Uh-huh. Okay, so that's where they're starting to break down all of everyone at this casino. The casino seems to be,
The spread.
yeah, the initial explosive part of this. Oh, bad news, Cecil. Dr. Mears wakes up coughing on day 14.
Dude,
She's got
I
the
felt so bad.
temperature, she's got the dizziness, she's got everything. And she knows she's fucked and she starts making calls. Her first thing is to call the
Oh my
hotel, need a list of
God.
everyone who serviced this room in the last 24 hours.
The
She
person who
calls,
brought me my room service last night. No, and
uh-huh.
she's like, I want their cell phone, I want their home address, I want their fucking family contact. I want all that info.
Yeah.
And I think only Kate Winslet has that like if Kate Winslet asked for it, you better fucking snap to it.
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of presence.
Yeah. She knows she's fucked though, and he
Yeah.
knows she's fucked too. I do one of the trademarks of Cheever that I really like is maybe it's um a little too sappy, but I do like that, early on he calls her when she's doing stuff in Minneapolis. He's like, "How are you doing?" She's like, "Okay, well, I interviewed this person, I dealt with this, and I'm handling this." And he's like, "I didn't ask what are you doing. I asked how are you doing? How are you holding up?" And these are good things to ask people, and especially
Yeah.
if you're the boss of somebody, and
Yeah.
especially if you're the boss of somebody in a really, really dangerous job like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think the follow-up question is as important, if not more important, because the next thing is like, when have you had any sleep? When have you eaten something that didn't come out of a vending machine? And
Yeah.
granted, we go, oh, that's nice. He cares about her well-being. But that's the thing. He cares about her. Like, if you're not keeping your body healthy,
Yep.
you're keeping the door open
Uh-huh.
for bad shit to come in. So, like, it's that counterintuitive thing. Like, yes, you want to work extra hard to solve the riddle of how the virus is spreading. But if you're burning the candle at both ends and not, I don't know, eating your leafy greens and eating that Taco Bell every day, and you're
Yeah.
only sleeping 3 hours and you're touching your face and touching the hands of all these fucking people, you're depleting your body. You're not giving it the thing that it might kind of fight off the thing.
If you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of others. There's a reason why we
Yeah.
say put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on your child in
Yeah.
the airplane safety video. Because if you pass out, then nothing matters at that point because you
Yeah.
can't help them anymore. That's a great point. So let's see here. We've got this and that. Let me jump ahead to because man, this sorry, it's taking me a second to get back on notes because this movie is told.
It's
Every scene is
fractured.
so short. Yeah,
And it's also very like it's very Steven Soderbergh is very fractal. I think the word that they kind of use is like fractal, like it's
fractal.
fractal filmmaking where it's like many stories, many storylines have like Babel is another one. Is it no Babel's Inarritu. Traffic, that was it. So like multiple stories like happening at once.
Oh yeah, like fractured, right? Because fractal is like a math term.
Yes.
Yeah, fractured, or is it a film term? I don't know. Somebody tell
Huh.
us in the notes. But yeah, no, yeah, all of this balancing all of the stories that are happening here. Um, Cheever starts realizing, well, he starts getting word from Homeland Security that they're going to start locking down cities, but they haven't announced to people this yet because as Admiral Lyle is telling him, he's like, if we start announcing it before we do it, people are going to freak out and we won't be able to contain it,
What
basically.
is the line? We want no one to know until everyone knows.
That's right. That's totally it.
How's
So,
that going to work, sir?
well, he gets Cheever calls his I apologize because we don't know the nature of his relationship to Aubrey yet, but I wrote he calls his daughter in Chicago. But this no is Lawrence Fishburne's fiance.
Yes.
um he calls his fiance Aubrey who is in Chicago and says, "I want you to get on the road
Yeah.
tonight. Don't stop, don't touch anyone, don't talk to anyone. Get to Atlanta now and don't stop. Just get out of town tonight." And meanwhile, the janitor overhears all of this and is like, I have people in my family too, doctor. Like, oh, but Aubrey, while at the store getting some supplies before getting out of town, gets a call from her bestie being like, it sucks. Why'd you bail on dinner tonight? She's like, nothing. I just okay. Here's the thing.
Like
My
Ellis
fiance
says,
told me.
this whole flu thing is going to be bad. It's bad, bad.
Yeah.
Did you also clock what she was shopping for? I thought like this sequence of like the like canned goods.
Uh-huh.
She has an entire shopping cart filled with batteries and flashlights,
Yeah.
which I found fascinating.
Uh-huh.
Because that to me actually was a bit of a misstep because that to me says like natural disaster rather than pandemic, which as we know is like going to be toilet paper, hand sanitizer, cleaning fluids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Day 18. We've got like a riot at the CVS because they're out of forsythia. Um, they're out of horse
Yikes.
tranquilizer or whatever
Yikes.
ivermectin is.
Ivermectin.
Yeah.
Fucking
Um, there's a moment where Mitch and his daughter go to the store. Again, Mitch, where just put a like put a mask on. You don't need to drag your daughter into the store
I know,
if
right?
you won't let her touch her boyfriend,
Yeah. Why are you
don't bring
taking
her
her
to the
outside?
store. Yeah.
Don't take her outside.
The most like horror trope moment in this film is when he is rounding the corner and there's a woman unmasked, just wet, coughing, and sweating. She's like, "Help
Help
me!"
me. You're like, girl, I can't help. Nobody.
Like,
Oh, damn. We got to get out of here. Diseased.
but they try and head up to Wisconsin, I guess, to go see her mother and I guess probably his family, whoever else, and they cannot get over the bridge.
Turned away. State by state lockdown.
Uh-huh. So we've got Mears as in like basically they keep trying to Cheever keeps trying to get her out on a flight, but he has no political power to get her out of there.
Yeah. Because
Um,
apparently they have one helicopter
yeah,
that is for very important governmental people to be moved from one place to another. And they already have some congressman who's already got the disease who's being moved.
yeah.
So tough luck.
And again, like who gets help? Who is
Yeah,
allowed to be helped first? And also like who is allowed to use their political power to do that
that's
without
right.
consequence? Because we learned that Cheever is not high enough the list of important people to be able to get away with whatever he wants,
Yeah,
whereas Illinois congressman
yeah,
can. Mears is dying basically in that hockey rink field
yeah.
hospital, sort of makeshift hospital, and the last thing, kind of the last sequence is really interesting because there's a man in a bed cot next to her who's like, "I'm so cold. Can you turn up the heat?" And she reaches over and hands him her coat, like
Yeah,
barely able to move. And the next thing we see is she is wrapped in plastic sheeting and being laid to rest in the potter's field.
yeah. And like the guy who was like a like her sort of assistant is like putting flowers
Yeah.
over her like in an open grave.
Yeah, and they're in hazmat suits, and he turns to one of the other guys, and he's like, "When did we run out of body bags?" He was like, "Earlier today."
We're trying to ask Canada, but Canada's also doing their own thing.
Yeah. We've got protesters showing up at the CDC as well, like chanting "No
Mm-hmm.
more lies, no more lies."
Oof.
And Cheever gets again. Ugh, this is the most. This like twisted my guts more than any scene in the
The
movie.
interview scene.
Yeah, Cheever gets pulled onto some CNN type of show, being interviewed about. He thinks he's just going to be answering questions about like, okay, here's the thing. So the reason
Procedure.
why we
Yeah.
this, that, and the other is that it takes a long time to develop a vaccine and to do the tests and to make sure it's safe. I know that there's this other thing called ribavirin that everyone is into now. What was the other drug that we were talking about that was in COVID that was
Uh
treating?
it's ivermectin. It was Ravinacquir. I don't know fucking know.
Yeah.
Bleach.
It wasn't, well, bleach was the thing, but there was some other drug that was like not curing the disease, but it treated this oh no, God, I
No.
almost said
I know. I can
ivermectin.
I can see it in my brain. But you know what? Here's the thing, Jeffrey.
Remdesivir, is that what it was called?
I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
here's the thing. I was so allergic to all of that side of things
Yes.
during the pandemic. I was like, bullshit, to kind of
Yes.
all of that, all of it. And as someone who is immunocompromised and has had to listen to doctors very carefully since my 20s for
Hmm.
very good reason,
Hmm.
I'm like, bullshit. My bullshit meter when it comes to vaccines, immunization. Listen, if your doctor tells you to take something, you better fucking take it.
Hmm.
You don't skip a dose. You don't mix. You don't skip a few days. You listen.
Yeah.
And like honestly, my HIV doctor, this is true. My HIV doctor worked in Atlanta during the 90s, during like
Oh,
the height
yeah.
of the AIDS crisis. Like
Yeah.
worked in Atlanta. I don't know if he worked for the CDC or with the CDC, but like he was on the forefront of the AIDS like epidemic when it was
Yeah.
an epidemic.
Yeah.
And now he's sort of retired to Asheville and he's works as in Asheville, but like he rides my ass and not in
Hmm.
the fun way. He's like, you do not miss a dose. You do not skip it. Like he is like, because he's seen the worst of it.
Yeah.
He's like, if you miss a pill, if you skip a day, your body develops a resistance. And then we have to go to another fucking thing. And we don't know what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
And from their point of view, it's like we just don't know is worse. Just we know what we know because we absolutely know it because we've proven it scientifically
Yeah.
rather than the sort of Jude Law, it could be the mercury, it could be the this, it could be the that, it could be the that, it could be fucking fairy tale unicorn fucking wings, could be anything.
Uh-huh.
But we know what we know. I don't know. I have
Well,
I have opinions about
yeah,
that
of
shit.
course. Of course. And the frustrating part about this is that Cheever is a guy who has, just like your doctor, he's seen the worst of it. He's been
Yeah,
through this. There is a process and procedure, and the reason there is a process and a procedure is because it has worked.
yeah,
Now, is it the best medicine we'll ever find for how to deal? Is this the best way to deal with pandemics? who knows? Things change all the time, but what we have now is a world in which anybody who has an opposite opinion must
Yeah.
be given equal time on the news. And
Right.
so, like,
Or we have people seeking out counter opinion, people that
yeah,
are into the I want to make noise because I want
yes,
to, to rise above. And so this pill is 99.9% effective to cure X. Well, what about that 0.01%? What about that?
yeah,
Is
yes.
so we
Well,
have
and
to
I,
give them
I think I was
time.
speaking more to less to like, of course, people are going to seek out other information and find conspiracies and hate online and things like that. I just mean that it's the news choosing to put him on.
Oh, I see. I
Because
see.
the thing that we run into over the last, 30, 40 years of newsmaking is this really old worldview that all sides need to be accounted for.
Mm,
But the problem is, all you need to do is stir up enough attention to your idea, and thus it becomes a valid counterpoint, even if it's horrible. So,
yeah.
like, I remember taking debate classes in college, and it was this kind of noble idea that you should be able to debate either sides of an issue because it's
Right.
a sort of a science debate is
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a chivalry to it. And but the problem is that, like, what if we get into the thing where we're like, well, I will take the opinion that kicking dogs is bad. You have to give me the other opinion. And you're like, what? I'm not going to talk about why I should
Well, I
kick
need to kick
dogs.
my dog for work every morning.
Yeah. All the
Uh,
way up to Nazism is
yeah.
bad, and it's like, what are we doing here? What are we
Yeah.
arguing about? And yeah, and Alan puts Cheever on his heels because they bring Alan on, and one, because he's so far out into the world of conspiracy bullshit, and two, he does do his work to find the tiniest threads to pull at, and what he
Yeah.
found was there was a woman on Facebook who created a group who announced that she knew Cheever had told people to get out of their city because of the lockdown hour, hours before the blockades went up.
Which honestly is like, look, proof that there
Yeah.
is a class system.
Yeah.
There's a you're using your privileged information to help people in your life to
Which
get
is
ahead.
which is true, but it's not a systemic problem. It was just Cheever trying to get his fiance to
I mean,
Atlanta.
is it a systemic problem though?
Well, I mean, okay, let me
It's a
rephrase that.
systemic problem as is in we are humans who make systems.
Yes, I
Therefore, it's
meant
a
it's
humanist problem.
that's I use the incorrect phrase. It is definitely a systemic problem because the way the system is set up is it allows people like Cheever to prioritize his own family. I should have used, is it a conspiracy organized by
Yes.
the US
Yes,
government
yes,
to make
yes.
sure that they protect their own? To some extent, yes, because we're saving Illinois congressmen
Yeah.
from shit without telling anyone. Anyways, very complicated, but he hits on some level of truth, but not the big picture of
Yeah.
what that
But in the
really
eyes of the
means.
media, like Cheever gets called into the office the next day. They're like, you will not be doing any more media appearances.
Nope. And
And
when pretty soon,
there
court
will probably
martial.
be some sort of inquest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're gonna got court martial. You're gonna have to go before Congress. Is what's gonna happen. We are day 21. Virus is mutated. It is in an HIV/AIDS cluster in Africa.
Uh-oh. It's the
Mortality rate.
Omega. We're at the Omega strain.
God, we didn't even get Wordle in this.
No, no.
We didn't get the Lion. Was it Lion King? Tiger King?
Tiger
Uh,
King. No Tiger King.
yeah. Good God. No Squid Game. Late
No.
stage porn. No, man. Mortality rate is now over a quarter, like 25%
Yeah.
of people get this disease. Our number is at 4, they think.
Yeah.
We've got MREs being rationed by the military, people just storming these trucks.
Lawless.
Yeah.
That was the thing that I mean, and maybe this is my perception because I was in New York City during the pandemic. pandemic
Hmm.
for most of it, and then here in Western North Carolina. But this definitely had a much more like lawless kind of take on
Hmm.
things. And I think it's because, again, due to the truncated, extreme nature of this virus versus the COVID-19 virus.
Hmm.
But this is much more like people with shotguns, like the looting, like police not even fucking knowing where to go. Like, like when Matt Damon calls that fucking 911 because there's people being shot in
And gets
next
their
door
answering machine.
and gets their answering machine. And it's all like, if you have a body that you need removed,
Hmm.
please throw out the window
Hmm.
and shout, bring out your dead
Yeah.
into the air.
Yeah, he witnesses a break-in and a shooting in a home,
Yeah.
and two men run out with guns, and they've clearly killed the homeowner. And so the
And I think
next
he
day,
knows them
yeah,
because
the
he knows
next,
their name when he knocks on, kind of like goes
well,
on the door.
my
Is that the
question
same
was
house?
I don't think it was the same house.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think what happened was the next day he goes to a home where
That he does know those people.
he does know the people and he knows they're not there.
Ah.
Because he knocks,
Mm,
Greg, you home? Greg, Tina,
no,
y'all
no.
home? All right. Smashes out their window, goes in,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
steals one of their rifles, and
Their
comes back
fridge is
home.
empty.
Yep.
Again, it's like shades of morality.
Yeah. Shades of morality. He's Jory sneaks out with Andrew, and the thing that's the thing about this is that we see a lot of movies wherein the kid is just cannot resist being
Yeah.
a bad child. And again, shades of morality, because when she goes out to meet Andrew, they both go out with masks on.
Yeah.
And they are sort of social
I
distancing because they're
know.
doing snow angels side by side and talking. But there's a moment where he sits up and he was like, "Listen, I'm not sick. You're not sick. We can't get each other sick." And he's like lowering the mask because he wants to kiss her. And that's when Matt Damon shows up holding a rifle and throwing him
Yeah.
off of her.
Like this is where this movie felt like a horror movie because we've been like we've been so trained, even COVID aside, we've seen so many like the fucking wet coughs in this movie. It's like we know that the
Hmm.
second that sloppy teenage fucking kiss happens, somebody's gonna die.
Yeah.
Is the feeling that we've been led to.
Yes. Yes. He is playing against zombie horror
Yeah.
tropes in this movie. Well, back at CDC, Allie is working. She's burning the midnight oil, working on these monkeys that are getting
They're,
injected
she's
with
just
shit.
killing monkeys left, right, and center.
But there's a vaccine number 57, and that monkey is still trucking right along. And so
Yeah.
she's like, let's do this, baby. And she injects herself with that virus or
Yeah.
that vaccine.
She has a really interesting, really, really good scene with her father, who's
Mm-hmm.
a doctor who is sick.
Mm-hmm.
And she's kind of talking about the history of there has to be a leap of someone who takes a leap of faith
Yes.
to say, I don't know if this is going to work, but we're never going to know unless we try.
Yeah.
And like, and her father is like, I don't want it to be you because you're my daughter. And she's like, well, I didn't want you, a doctor, to go out and treat all those sick people to get you sick, but that's the role we're cast, like that's your job. You did it, and I don't want you to be sick, but you did it, and you did it of your own free will. So here
It's
we go.
um it's so interesting this scene sort of coming on the heels of the scene with Mitch and his daughter, and here you have another father-daughter
Yeah,
situation because there's a protective nature, and in that
yeah,
scene Mitch is overprotective.
yeah,
He's too aggressive, bordering on violent, um because he loves her too much and he can't control his protectiveness. And here's a moment with the dad who's like seeing you can't protect your child,
yeah,
but you can raise them right
yeah,
to the best of your ability. And to see that your daughter, that you raised her like you, and she's proud of that and happy with that,
yeah,
and that you see it's a really touching scene. He's so proud of her
yeah.
and so scared for her. But we jump ahead. We are now at the first production of the MEV1 vaccine. And the question becomes on the news, who gets it first?
Oh, fuck.
Aubrey.
That was fucking triggering for me.
Yep. Yep.
And what was interesting is the Bumble. I was like, where's the clown president coming in being like, "Blah, blah, blah, blah." Because you know how I got my vaccine? Twitter.
Hmm.
Because literally the system was so kind of fucked up
Mm-hmm.
that literally somebody made a Twitter account that was like, hey, they have like extra vaccines at certain places because they don't the distribution system is so messed up. So if you get your ass to this place at this time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then go for it.
Yeah.
Because they didn't like the shipping was so like
Yeah.
it was so bumblefucked
Yeah.
here in
They are
America. Here
they
in
were way
America.
more yeah, they were way more organized in this film for how the vaccine gets laid out. Um, so we've also got Aubrey gets robbed because these armed robbers were like, they know she's the fiance of the head of the
Yeah.
CDC. So like, where's the vaccine? We know you get it first. Again, it's a little January 6th. It's a little bit
Yeah.
QAnon. It's a little bit
Yeah.
like people who get so tied into the conspiracies that they believe it, that JFK Jr. is going to show back up at Dealey
That like
Plaza.
we're gonna
Yeah.
kidnap Nancy, we're gonna kneecap Nancy Pelosi's husband until
Yes.
we get a recount.
Yes. Totally. Alan is meeting with the hedge fund guy again, and the hedge fund guy is being like, listen, that forsythia doesn't work. And he's like, listen, the vaccine doesn't work because they rushed those trials. The whole thing's fucked up. And who knows if it causes cancer or autism, which was interesting.
Mhm.
And he's going to tell his viewers not to take the vaccine. And he says, I just, listen, can make all this happen for you, dude. I just need you to tell me how will you protect me in this
Yeah.
case? And then essentially that's when the feds pounce.
Yeah.
He's like, wait, are you wearing a wire?
Oh, yes, he is.
But he said enough
Yeah.
to get the feds after him, which,
As soon as it becomes a quid pro quo, as soon
yes,
as it's a like, what do I get for this information? I think the feds have enough to step in, right?
yeah.
But
But we're gonna see later in this when the head
the
of
the judicial system is a long, complicated process.
well, there's a moment where like the Homeland Security guy is talking to Alan, and it's like, you got nothing, we're gonna, you're gonna go away for a long time, so whatever. And then his assistant comes in and whispers into his ear, and he's like,
Yeah,
well,
looks like you're
looks
free to
like
go.
you have enough crazy fans. They go funded me your bail.
Yeah. I also like, man, kind of the question that I wanted to do more research on before this podcast. Like, as he's being taken away, they want to take his blood to prove that he never had the vaccine. And he says, you can't have my blood.
It's private property.
It's my private property. And that was one of the questions that I kind of went to bed as I went to sleep last night. I was like, is that true?
Hmm.
Is that a true thing? I wonder if you could prove that in court.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure you could make an argument for it, but I was like, I wonder what the validity of that would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I bet you could make a case for that in court, but I wonder how that
Maybe,
would
but
hold
you
up.
you would need a lawyer to do that because the world is filled with these guys who just claim this shit.
Yeah.
And if they're right,
And
maybe they
see
are,
what
but
sticks. Yeah.
but yeah, but the ability to actually like land any of that. I
Because
think the
possession
comfort,
is 9/10 of the law, and he does possess 9/10 of his blood.
I guess, I just took solace in the fact that once the feds go after you,
Oh yeah.
once the
You're
feds begin a case, you're fucked. It
yeah.
kind of you're just hoping your lawyer
Yeah.
minimizes the damage that they're going to do to you. But in a political case like this, who's a public figure who's going to make a big stink and who's back out on bail and gets to use his website, who
Any
knows
publicity
how
is good
much,
publicity.
or is weaponized publicity because
Yeah. They're coming after me.
the government will back down in a case wherein they think they will lose more face than they will gain.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Um, yeah. And it also depends on who's president. It depends on who's in office. It depends on what
Quote,
the
they've weaponized the judicial system against me.
yeah,
Unquote.
yeah, that's totally it. So we've got a few things winding down this film. So we're wrapping up these stories. Like Jory is like so frustrated because like she can't get out. She's gonna lose her spring and lose her summer. She's missing fucking prom. They're doing
Mhm.
a lottery drawing based on birthday of who gets the
Makes
vaccine.
sense. I think that's I honestly makes sense.
It's interesting. It's more. It makes it more easy to organize than saying um, people who are immunocompromised first,
Yeah.
because it's like at what level? How do you
Yeah.
prove that? And you turns out you didn't have to prove that. You could just say that and go in. So we've also got the hostage exchange for Dr. Orantes,
Yeah.
wherein they bring like 100 doses in exchange for her. They only test it on her to make sure she doesn't die immediately, that they didn't poison them. But they don't test as to whether or not they are placebos.
Because how would you know?
They buy it, drive off, and that's when her colleague at the
He's like,
WHO
oh,
is
by the
like,
way, here's your real dose.
yeah,
Brutal.
yeah, it's tough. Um, yeah, she's heading back to the village, I guess, to go live out her life there. Stockholm syndrome, as it
I
were.
know. She's like, I guess I'm gonna like stand with this
Hmm.
impoverished community that probably it would take for fucking ever for them to get a vaccine
Yeah,
if they didn't have leverage.
yeah. And so
So
she will use her return to the village to try and get that leverage, I
yeah.
guess. I would say like I think like the sappiest sort of eye rolly thing in this movie to me. I liked her arc because it
Mhm.
is interesting to be like, this is why I did this job. If we're not, I
Yeah.
know they went about this in a way,
Yeah.
but
How she
also,
got there was a little messed up, but she still,
some
yeah.
people are like the reason why people react this way in really, really beaten down or marginalized communities. Uh, you have to respond that way
Yeah. Yeah.
almost. And that's the shame of the world that we resort to ransoms or terrorism or whatever else. Cheever is given his two vaccines, but he gives one for his now wife because government officials get automatically whatever. So he
Yeah.
gives one to his wife, but then he gives his own to the janitor's son.
And this kind of made me so mad. Not
Yes.
because he gave it to the son, but because he's wearing his fucking wristband. So I was like,
You, sir, are not vaccinated,
you're not vaccinated. And that kid is now vaccinated, but has no record of
but
being vaccinated.
can't prove it. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and which is going to be fucked up. Like that whole thing is bonkers to me. And yes,
It just
silly.
meant a little like,
Yeah. They're trying to show he's a good guy, but I'm like, this
yes.
comes across as in like, you're sloppy, dude. That's bad. And yeah, where we leave Alan is he's back at vaccination centers, like essentially interviewing people in line at these giant baseball stadiums to get
Yeah.
vaccinated. And clearly he is probably out there trying to influence people. And don't you think this is going to give you autism or whatever?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So dad, Mitch, he buys a prom dress for Beth, leaves it for her in a box saying like, be ready at 8, decorated the living room. Andrew is allowed to come over because Andrew got vaccinated
Hmm.
and she's been quarantined. I don't think that's quite how that. I think you can be vaccinated and still carry the disease, but still, whatever.
Uh-oh.
We're doing it
We're
how we
wrapping
do it.
shit up.
Honestly, the point that made me mad is this is 2011 and this is a 17-year-old girl,
Yeah.
right? 16, 17. So born in 1995-ish, 94. And her boyfriend comes over for prom night. It is 2011. What are we going to dance to?
Oh,
You two.
no. 1980s, you two.
Are you
Or,
fucking
or
kidding
90s,
me?
you two. Yeah.
Fuck off. I just, I was like, absolutely not.
It's not
Absolutely
Taylor
not.
Swift.
No, well, I mean, like at least like I mean, Beyonce for crying out
Yeah.
loud, right? Somebody like
Yeah.
somebody doing like pop ballady stuff.
Dad clearly made that playlist for her.
Oh, you know what I thought it was, even though it was the wrong era of U2, but I was like, was this the year
The the,
that
the album that they put on like all those fucking
uh,
iTunes
all the iPods
they're like, hey, we just
automatically
gave you a
downloaded?
free YouTube album, and
And
everybody under the age of like 40 went, who?
no, everybody like freaked out. They got mad. Like everyone got so mad about it. And I did too. I was like, don't put fucking shit on my iPod. And also the other thing that made it crazy was because that was back when it was iTunes and you could not delete that
Oh
album.
yeah.
Like Apple had to like send out instructions to be like, here's how you delete the album.
And YouTube was
Don't know
like, what
why
do you
you
mean you
want
don't want our
to.
music for free?
Yeah, don't know why you want to delete it, but I guess if you have to, here it is. That was the most unrealistic part of this movie. I was like, no way, this teenager is putting on U2 to dance to her boyfriend with.
Yeah.
But he finds Beth's digital camera in the closet, Mitch does, and starts looking through the photos of all her trip in Macau, and he starts crying. She's touching all these other people. And then the final shot is a bulldozer from that AIMM construction manufacturing company that she worked for, knocking down a palm tree, bunch of bats flying away, a bat stopping
Eats a
to eat
banana.
banana, flying inside a slaughterhouse, accidentally dropping the thing of banana to the floor. The pigs eat it. Suddenly, all the pigs look a little janky. A pig is bought and slaughtered and is being served, prepped in a kitchen, and
Ooh.
we see the chef
Like
with his
bare hand, just
fingers in
like
the
putting his
mouth of the
hand in
pig,
that pig mouth.
and he stops to just wipe his hands on his apron, and then he walks out of the kitchen and shakes hands with Beth. Day one, the end. It's as simple as that. That's how simple a pandemic can start,
I
Cecil.
mean, it's interesting that it's like globalization
Yeah.
because it's really like bats and pigs don't
Uh-huh.
usually go together until you start putting those to
The
build
industries that
until
need.
humans
Uh-huh.
take over, and then we're like, oh no, we need room for more humans, and the other things on this
Yeah.
planet are like, there's no room for us anymore.
Yeah.
We have to
Yep.
start living together and making these weird ass viruses when a bat and a pig start sharing the same food trough.
Plandemic, Cecil. Plandemic. All right, let's shall we rate this movie?
Yes, let's.
How approachable is this movie if you're horror film averse on a scale of 1 to 10, with being not at all approachable, 10 being super approachable? I give Contagion 8 out of 10 dirty aprons. Like it's a thriller and it battles against horror tropes. It's not scary at all. I mean, obviously, as we said, it's disturbing because it stirs up a lot of dust that came about from 2000 and beyond. So the last 5 years have been tough and are still tough. And this movie is going to address some of that. But like I said in my intro, I do think that's what horror or fiction does. And horror does it really well. But like all of fiction, like, it helps us deal with shit. It helps us deal with anything from just feelings we have about love or loss or betrayal or whatever, all the way up to how we as a world and as individuals coped with a global pandemic. And so I do think it's important to stare into the void sometimes, and I think this movie helps do that. So 8 out of 10 dirty aprons, obviously content warning about child death. There's a brain surgery scene that's a little bit like, ooh. And again, pandemic quarantine. So, but to speak nothing of approachability, how do you rate this as a horror film, Cecil?
It's interesting as a horror film. This is not a great horror film because
No.
it's not scary.
Great film, not great horror
Not
film.
a great horror film, but it is one that, listen, you're going to monitor the amount of times you touch your face after you watch this movie. And you're definitely going to, it's going to take you back to those moments where you're like, oh, that person just touched that thing and then touched that other person.
Yeah.
Scary.
Uh-huh.
So if you find that scary, then it is a horror film. So I would say like 2 out of 10. Um, hands in a bowl full of communal peanuts.
Let's figure out what movie we're going to watch next. You've got a scare die. I've got a style die. We'll roll those up and see what movie matches those two things. So, Cecil, on your scare die, if you roll a one, our next movie scare is mythological. Two, it's a wild card. Three, creepy kids. Four, alien. Five, paranormal. Or six, psycho killer. What's our scare?
That's a 3.
Creepy kids. All right, so we're gonna match up your creepy kids with the style that I roll. So if I roll a one, our next movie's got to be based on a book. If I roll a two, it's got to be a one-word title. Three, a sequel, a prequel, or remake. Four, it's got to be set in New York, New York. Five, something from the 2000s. Or six, PG/PG-13. Let's see what we got here. Six, PG-13.
Oh, all right. Oh, there's some good ones for this.
Yeah. All right. We just put that on,
Yeah, it's
put that
super
on.
new.
Okay, so let's talk about the ones that we have on our list that we feel like match up well. And then we also have a letterboxd account at Random Horror 9. You can check our lists where we have all of the possible matchups of each die roll, and you can leave comments to help us pick these movies. So on our list, I threw down just the first ones that came to mind. Insidious is
Oh,
surprisingly
yeah.
PG-13. Real
Yeah.
creepy fucking kids. And the other three are, well, we've got The Ring, the US version. That's a real
Yes.
creepy
I
fucking
can't believe
kid.
that we've not seen this already,
I
to be
know.
honest. We've seen the
We
Japanese one, though.
we have. Also, we've seen the Japanese Dark Water, but we haven't seen the American remake.
And I didn't know if this counted as creepy. There's definitely a creepy kid in this one, right?
I believe so, if I
Because it's that
remember.
haunted little ghost kid.
Yeah, yeah,
So definitely creepy kid. And, this is like, again, feel how you want to feel about American Hollywood remakes of other countries' horror films. But, Jennifer Connelly,
yeah.
cool.
I guess you could throw The Grudge in there too, which we've also
The
seen the
Grudge, yeah,
original. Yeah.
yeah. Definitely a creepy
And
kid in that one.
another one that I put on is The Others.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's one of those where like there's definitely kids
Mm-hmm.
and those kids encounter some creepy shit.
Yeah, yeah, true. So that could be. I've never seen The Others. I mean, I know how the movie plays out,
There's a
but
couple of like misdirection with the children, I will
uh
say. But the kids are not the scare. The kids are often the but it's all mixed up in there.
yeah. Okay, well let's see what people on our letterboxd had to say, movies that they had to suggest.
All right, let's see. Monstrum seconds The Ring.
Great.
Flannery Jane seconds The Others. Cronenberg seconds The Others. J.B. Wolf recommends Salem's Lot 2004, the miniseries recut as a telefilm. Oh, that's kind of cool.
Oh
Vampire
yeah.
Kids. Awesome. Face Major recommends Paranorman from 2012, stop motion piece from the makers of Coraline. Norman Babcock has a unique talent for communing with the dead, and his parents are not into it, which makes him the weird kid in school. But his uncle warns him that his unique talents are the only thing that can ward off a witch's curse.
Nice. Oh, and that is Farce Majeure is that name.
Farce Major. Sorry.
I
Sorry about that.
I really, really want uh Letterboxd. I love this website, but I really want them to increase their font size just slightly. Just a little bit. I know I
My
can do
old
that, but I refuse to admit I'm old. I need other
my
people
old
to
eyes.
that. Yep.
It's Ken Jamin recommends Adam's Family
Oh
Values.
yeah.
That's a good one.
Uh-huh.
That's a solid one. Fifth Hammer recommends It's Alive 1974. Oh God, I haven't thought about that movie in forever. Lenore and Frank Davis are about to have their second child, and as Lenore gives birth, the newborn vanishes and leaves behind 5 dead bodies.
Oh
It's up to
shit.
the police and Frank to figure out where their mutated child has gone. God, this is
Damn.
one that like when I would go out on the weekends and like I remember the video box for this was so tantalizing in the horror movie section.
I love that it's just so shocking the movies that are like PG.
I know, right? There's so many horror movies that are PG-13 that you would not expect.
Yep.
Ganymede's Cup recommends Ouija, Origin of
Of
Evil,
course,
which
yeah.
is like widely regarded as much better than the original one. I put
Hmm.
Ouija as a PG-13 on a couple of these. Um, American supernatural horror movie from Mike Flanagan. A widow and a family introduce a Ouija board into their phony seance business, thereby inviting a spirit that possesses the youngest daughter. So I've not
Dope.
seen this, but sounds like creepy kids.
I like a Mike Flanagan.
Like a Mike Fine. I love always so many feelings, so many thoughts and feelings.
Uh-huh.
Um, Ellen Tiermo,
Sure.
Ellen Turmo,
Hmm.
Adam's Family Values, Adam's Family, Creepy Kids Galore, Wednesday and Pugsley, love
Yep.
it. Katie recommends Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, they
Are
ask
there
if
creepy
that
kids?
works for the show. I haven't seen Five Nights at
I've seen
Freddy's.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
It's like creepy things in a kid's space, right? It's a
No,
Chuck E. Cheese
no,
type
no,
thing.
absolutely, Katie, because there's a lot of sequences with creepy kids that kind of I won't spoil it. Yes, there are creepy kids in that
Okay,
one.
great. Okay, thank you.
Weaponized Toaster, Insidious, The Ring, The Grudge. Yeah, see, I couldn't remember if The Grudge was PG-13 or not, the American remake of the Japanese film. And Megan. I also thought about putting
I
Megan under
I
here
did
because I was
too, and
like,
I wasn't sure
creepy
if it
kid
counted
robot?
because the kid is a robot. Yes.
Kinda.
Spoiler: Megan is a robot.
It's kid-like,
Uh-huh.
kid-esque. And Suspicious Beans recommends The Damned from
Mm.
1962, rated 12 in the UK. So same. Tagline: Children of ice and darkness. They are lurking, unseen evil you dare not face alone. Middle-aged American finds himself in the company of two dodgy siblings, and one is young Oliver Reed. Ooh, hot. Finding a series of caves, they all become trapped in a top secret government facility where experiments are taking place. Oh my,
Shit.
that sounds fascinating.
Does. I'm having a hard time finding that particular movie on Just Watch, so it might have had a different name for US release, but that does sound really interesting.
Oh dear. Oh yeah, we definitely got some creepy kids on the movie poster.
All right, what's standing out to you, Cecil?
I think this is a golden opportunity for us to get a solid horror hit.
Yes.
Because Contagion had a great time, but I'm in the mood for like a solid horror movie. Like I want to like a 7 or above on the horror movie scale. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
I
like as
agree.
much as I loved Adam's Family Values, Paranorman, I think those are all great suggestions. I want a solid horror film.
Um, so some questions here. Hold on just a second. I'm gonna look at Roddy T's because I think where we're gonna really hit the solid horror film is either gonna be one of the Japanese remakes
Yeah.
or Insidious.
Yeah.
I think uh so Dark Water was 47 and 28% on Rotten Tomatoes, so both
Yes.
audience and critics disliked it.
Yeah.
Hold on just a second. The American Grudge, which I believe had the same director as I think it was the Japanese director,
Oh, that's solid. Okay.
but again, 40%, 46%.
Really? Oh, it rated that low.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
And then The Ring was like probably like it's got to be like
I
60 or
it's a lot
80.
higher. It's 71% from critics,
Yeah.
48% from audiences. I think the thing about The Ring is it was kind of like the first of the J
Yes.
horror to be translated into
Yeah.
American. And so a lot of critics or people who were new to the genre were like, holy shit, this is the scariest fucking thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
horror fans are like, I've already seen this shit. It's not
Yeah.
as good.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think The Ring, I have seen the American Ring and the Japanese. I really like the American Ring
Yeah.
a lot. But I've
But
never
then
seen
also,
Insidious. Is that scarier? Is that more horror?
it's been a long ass time since I've seen Insidious. I can't say. I mean, I'm based on the conversation we're having, I would go with Insidious just because you haven't seen it.
Uh-huh.
And I remember so little about it. If I remember right, it's your pretty typical Amityville haunted house takes over a kid kind of story, I think,
Okay.
if I remember correctly.
And it's James Wan,
Oh, amazing.
yeah, who we love, and Lee Wanell, who has I think also wait, Lee Wanell did something else that we
That
have
name
seen.
doesn't ring a bell immediately, but
Lee Wanell directed The Invisible Man. And Lee
okay.
Wanell,
Oof.
he was the writer of Insidious and has
Okay.
worked with James. I'm looking at now, worked with James Wan on Saw, Dead Silence, and the Insidious movies.
Let's do Insidious.
Yeah, I don't know much about it, and I've liked what was the James Wan film that we watched for this show was oh, we saw The Conjuring, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I
We did
think
that
is
for
James Wan.
Patreon.
It's what was the it was a pandemic movie, 2021. The on it came out on HBO. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, Malignant.
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 Yeah, totally malignant. Yes.
About a killer wig, right?
Yep. It totally is.
Yeah, like I love a remake, and these are like The Grudge and The Ring are like solid remakes, but and the others is a good one, but I think it's like I think Insidious is the move here.
I think so too. I think we should do that. And yeah, we want to watch a solid, true genre horror.
Yeah.
And let's watch something I haven't seen before. That sounds great. All right. Well, if y'all have, I'm sorry. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Cecil, for talking with me. And if y'all have thoughts on Contagion or ideas for the movie you would have picked for creepy kids and PG-13, let us know at Random Horror 9 on our Patreon or on our Instagram. The Patreon has public discussion threads for every episode, and you don't have to be a paying member to participate in those. So watch Insidious from 2011 with us this week and come on back next Tuesday for a new episode. Have a restful night with no one playing U2 songs at your prom or nothing. Boo.
Boo.